Okay, I want to talk to you about something today's Friday Focus, January the 8th. We're going to talk about how can you do things more effectively in your life, at work, in your personal life, in your family, and make it so you don't have to think about it. So a lot of times when we're trying to do something better, maybe we have New Year's resolutions, which I'm sure a lot of us have, we stress over the fact that we got to think about doing something different. We got to put it in our brain, remember it, try not to forget. Tomorrow, get up, think about it again, try not to forget. And it's become very distressing. Sometimes we fall behind on our goals or our plans or resolutions because we're spending too much time trying to use our brain to make it happen. Okay? So I'm going to talk to you about your brain, okay, and how you can use your brain to your advantage. Okay? I want to tell you other things about the brain, but today I'm going to stick with one part. Okay? So we have things that are, we'll call it cognitive. Cognitive things are things such as talking to your patient and finding out what they want and listening to them, paying attention, communicating with your friends. If you go out to the restaurant or go out to the place with your kids to eat dinner and you guys are having a fun conversation, this is cognitive. This is when you're thinking about what they're saying and you're responding. Then there's another part of your brain that we call habits. Now, a habit is a part of your brain, it's a different part of your brain that allows you to back your car to the garage without thinking about putting it in reverse and hitting the garage door opener and checking that the way is clear. Now, you're obviously having some thought, but sometimes you'll be driving along and you're like, oh my gosh, how'd I get here? And you were where you're supposed to be. You don't remember if you went through the green light or not, but you did because your habits took over. There's a different part of your brain that controls your habits than controls your cognitive thoughts. Okay? So cognitive thoughts is your thinking, your analysis, doing math. And habits are things that allow you to come up with ideas, it's part of the brain that lets you come up with ideas and allows you to do things automatically, and it takes stress off your cognitive part of your brain. So if you made 15 New Year's resolutions and every major, say, paradigm changes in your life, it'd be really hard because your cognitive part of your brain has to think about each one of those. You're doing it differently. So I'm going to show you how to use the part of your brain that controls habits to make it easier. Okay? So let's say we have two major parts of our brains. We have the cognitive part and we have the habit part. And they're actually in different parts of our brain. There's even more parts than that, but these are the two I'm going to talk about. Now before the Friday Focus, I did this little drawing here. Excuse my artwork. This is your cerebral cortex in here. Everybody's seen these. These are called gyri, and the brain looks kind of like a cauliflower. This is called the cerebellum, and cerebellum has to do with balance and movement. This down here is your brainstem, and the brainstem controls things like that are really you don't have to think about, like breathing and choking and swallowing. If you drop a baby in the water accidentally, don't do it, but it'll hold its breath because the brainstem, without even being trained how to hold its breath, will make it suck in. Okay? It's called a diving reflex. Breathing. You know, baby's born and starts crying and screaming and breathing. Didn't do that a minute earlier, it was in the womb, but its brainstem tells it to breathe. Okay? So brainstem is real primitive. The cerebellum is relatively primitive too because it does things like balance and motion. And then you have your cortex. We'll call this the cerebrum or the cortex. I'll call it the cortex for this. We'll call it cortex equals cognitive. Okay? So the cortex allows you to do complex thought and assign movements to your body. So if you're, like, say, a basketball player, your cortex is responsible for teaching you to make moves, but over time there's a different part of your brain that allows the basketball player to make it happen. And that's this part right here. Okay? This is called the limbic system. And it's made up of many different organs, and we don't need to list them for you, but it's like the thalamus and the amygdala and the substantia nigra and the corpus callosum and the cingulate gyrate. But there's a lot of parts in this portion here that control different things. It actually has to do with your mood, how you respond to things, your emotions, memory, certain parts of memory. So it's a little bit between the prehistoric automatic things about breathing and dive reflex and solving math. There is your limbic system. Okay? Now when you start doing activities and start doing new things, like let's say you decide this year I'm going to eat healthier. Okay? you got to use your cortex to go to the store and you think, well, I remember reading that going on the outside of the aisles will be healthier because they'll get the produce and the leaner meats, and the inside of the store is more boxed foods and packaged foods and butter and sugar. That's using your cognitive ability. You know that, you've heard it, you read it. Or you might start thinking about, well, I'm going on this buffet. Maybe I should just order a la carte rather than buffet, because if I order a buffet, I want to get my money's worth and overeat. Or you go to a restaurant and you read every food menu and you take a while to choose what food you're going to eat, okay? However, if you do that over and over again, and you spend a lot of time with your cognitive energy doing a new activity, eventually your brain, in order to preserve cognitive function, pushes it into the limbic system, okay? If you had to think about this, like imagine if any of you guys have kids, or when you learn to drive, when you're first learning to drive, it's all up here, and you're kind of a crappy driver, okay? Because you have to think about lights and stopping, acceleration, what gear is it in, what speed am I going, what's the speed limit say, what's the person yelling at me to tell me to slow down. All that stuff is cognitive. But over time, you've done it over and over again, and your brain has learned to, you know what, this is no longer so deep thought, let's move it down here into our limbic system and just do it automatically. And those thoughts are generated from the limbic system, and the limbic system allows you just to drive the car, okay? And when somebody's talking to you, you can actually carry on a conversation, okay? Then you get more complex thoughts like texting and stuff like that. Obviously, you don't want to do that, but you can talk to somebody cognitively, and your limbic system will drive the car, okay? We don't have to spare energy to drive the car because our cognitive portion is doing it. Now we get into a rough situation. Let's say there's a construction zone. The limbic system's like, I'm not used to driving in construction. Now your brain cognition has to take over and drive the car. You shouldn't be talking then. If you ever notice when you're going through a construction zone, you don't want to talk, right? You're not paying attention to the radio. Okay, so that's the cortex is cognition, and the limbic does a lot of things, but it's responsible for habits. I've really been trying to study and understand habits better because I'm trying to change the habits of our patients, particularly patients that are maybe not taking care of themselves. Trying to change the habits of our staff who can, things we're wanting to teach you, I want it to be automated. So let's talk about a habit occurs. First off, there's a stimulus. And the stimulus could be, you're in a car, so something's got to happen. It could be that you're stressed at work, and you might do something because you're stressed at work out of your habit. Then there's an action, and the action might be overeating. It might be driving the car autonomously. It might be smoking a cigarette, okay? And then there is a reward. Okay, so stimulus could be anything. It could be, let's talk about overeating. The stimulus could be rough day at work. Then the action could be big old plate of food, stuff we shouldn't eat. And the reward is that sugar high that you get, or full stomach, or feeling good after eating. Well, in order to change your habit, you must change one of these three things. The stimulus, maybe you get a different job, or avoid the stress. Divorce a jerk. There's different things you could do to get rid of the stimulus. And when people have major change in their lifestyle, they lose a bunch of weight. A lot of times the stimulus changed. They got a life change. They moved. You could change the action. The action's kind of hard to change because that is what we think about as the habit. The action of overeating or drinking too much or smoking too much or yelling at our kids or getting frustrated. Or a good habits like cleaning up your room, making sure your car is clean, getting your tasks done early. So the actions are something that are a little harder to change, and then the reward. Sometimes we have to forcibly change the reward. I'll give you an example with what's making me think about the habits is the ORBERA balloon. When there's a stimulus, which is life, and there's a reward, which is feeling good after eating a tremendous amount of food. But the action now is stopped because we put a balloon in their stomach, and they can no longer eat a big meal, okay? But the stimulus is still there. The action stopped, so I want to work on those patients changing the reward from feeling good and being full, because they're going to look for another reward. And they might pick up another bad habit. Don't want them to do that. So we're going to talk to them about being extremely healthy and thinking about everything they put into their mouth and eating organic food and eating healthier. Because my thought is if they have a reward that's good, which is feeling good about yourself, people compliment how good your skin looks, that's a different reward. When we take the balloon out, that action doesn't return because the stimulus is still going to be there. Okay? So stimulus, action, reward. So when you're in a situation where you're doing something that you want to change your habit, you've got to look at these three things. You've got a stimulus, which could be anything. You've got an action, which might be something that you want to do or don't want to do. And you got the reward. For myself, I eat very healthy. I have since I was a kid. And the stimulus is I'm hungry. And the action is I automatically look around for healthy foods. When I'm at a restaurant, I ignore 90% of the menu. I know to look for seafood. And it's not seafood that I want to eat because it's got mercury or something. I just have vegetables or something. I'll find the healthiest thing on the menu. It takes no cognitive power for me to do that. Okay? And people, when I go out with them, they say, oh, you have a lot of willpower. No. I just don't think about eating bread unless I'm super hungry. I think about eating the healthier things on the menu because I set that habit when I was a teenager. Okay, my dad had a heart attack at a young age. I stopped eating junk. But because that habit is so ingrained, okay, when I go to the restaurant or I'm exposed to a food or buffet, I use no cognitive ability. None of my brain at all has to spend energy wasting time avoiding food, and that's willpower. And willpower is a very powerful thing, we think, but in reality, if you create a habit, the willpower is just easier. The person that exercises regularly, it's just part of their life. It's a habit they made. They start thinking about it. If they missed exercise, about getting back to it. Now they're not forcing themselves to do it. So when you make your New Year's resolutions, my suggestion is go ahead and write them down, but do them one by one. Okay? If you try to do them all, you're going to be forcing the cognitive part of your brain to fail because you can only do so many things at one time. Ask yourself, when you have 3 people talking to you at once, can you pay attention to any of them? You can't, because they're requiring your cognitive ability. But if you say, I'm going to eat fantastic, exercise all the time, I'm going to stop, I'm going to spend more time with my kids and pay more attention, I'm going to stop drinking so much, I'm going to quit smoking, that's good to do. Those are all good to do. But you might start doing one and get it kind of into a habit, then put the other one into a habit, because what it allows you to do, it allows your cortex to start doing a new activity, performing a new function, which is thinking about healthy foods, exercising. Okay, so your cortex does this, and once you've done it for a little bit of time, you can push it off into your limbic system and not have to really think about it anymore. Okay, and as you train yourself to do that, as you train yourself to use your ability to create habits, you can do more and more habits with a higher speed. Okay, there's habits that I have that are good, and habits I have that are not so good. So I take the bad habits and I try to figure out how to alter the stimulus or alter the reward. And the good habits, I use those, push them away, and try to get other good habits. One of my habits is to read business books and psychology books every week. And it's something I just do, and I think about it all the time. I don't really think about it. My head's telling me to do it. I know if I eat something that I shouldn't eat, my head's thinking, you need to run. Because I put the habit in my head a long time ago that if I eat inappropriately, I got to fix it somehow. Or if I see a buffet, my head says automatically, don't get the buffet. You're going to want to get your money's worth, which you don't want to do. And you'll be upset with yourself afterwards. So I don't have to put thought into it, okay? Because I created those habits. There's other habits that I want to create, and then I got to figure out how to build them. First off, you got to look at the stimulus. Maybe you can get rid of the stimulus. That's possible. Sometimes you can't. If you cannot, can you change the reward and start doing a different activity? For example, let's say your habit is eating. Maybe reading, and then growing your brain. That might be a good reward activity. Or maybe taking a walk with your dog or your kids. That might be a good activity and reward. So I want you to think about is things that you want to do better in your life and that you've struggled with. And how do you push them out of your brain that makes you use willpower, which is hard to do. Because willpower, we keep relying on that, and it's not a very friendly emotion, okay? Because it wants us to push us back into habits. Habits take over our lives, and we need willpower to push us out of that. But unless you do it really consistently and change either the stressor, say the cue, let's call it the cue. The cue, which is the message that something's going on, then there's the activity, and then there's a reward. You must change one of those to create a new habit, okay? A good one is finding a new reward. If the reward of overeating or not exercising enough is, or whatever it is, just alter that reward. So that's today's Friday focus. I want to talk to you later on, probably in a month or so, about how to even divide your brain between the right and the left to use it to get more, unlock your genius a little bit more. Right? This is going to be help you unlock your ability to get the things done that you want to get done without having to put a tremendous amount of mental effort into it. Thank you.